EA, after had announced the 10 kings to rule over 10 districts of Atlantis, formed a governing council, which I here will call the Royal Governing Council of Atlantis. These kings worked under the pretense that they were of the divine and therefore had the divine right to rule over others. Under them were the shamans and their high priests and priestesses, which I here will call the Lesser Council. Thus, Poseidon, in contrast to his Aryan heritage, had now created elitism amongst humans in standard Syrian style. This was not done by accident. Remember, I have said many times that the gods have long thoughts, a term which I've borrowed from Lissa Royal and Keith Priest and their book, The Prisms of Lyra, and it's an excellent term to describe the alien mind. They don't die like we do, so therefore they often plan a long time into the future, sometimes thousands of years. EA knew that one day he and the Syrians may have to return to the stars, and while they are gone, they wanted a ruling class of human hybrids left here on Earth to rule over the less fortunate. However, what it seems is that they never really left, except for a few hundred years in the beginning of the Common Era. Other than that, many of them left, but a skeleton crew remained here on Earth, some embodied and some in spirit, and continued ruling humans behind the scenes, often interdimensionally, and used the hybrids, today's global elite, to execute their plans. Most people think that the global elite was created by the Syrians, or the Anunnaki if we talk Sitchin language, but it was not. In fact, EA was the one who came up with the idea, and this governing system is applied still today. We call it autocracy when a country or region is ruled by one person, such as a king or a president, although we also know that there are always those of secret powers who rule behind the scenes, so-called shadow governments, and behind them, interdimensional powers pull the strings. Not even the selected kings, Poseidon's sons with the human female, Cleito, knew everything about the plans of EA and the Syrian overlords. They were still hybrids and of lower rank than the full-blooded extraterrestrials. They did not know how to extract the energies of the 96% from the female shamans. And Poseidon, when he had set up his Atlantean empire, was rarely seen above ground, spending most of his time under the ocean floor where he had his genetic laboratories. When EA was gone, some of the kings who were curious and jealous of the shamanic powers some females had, wanted to know how to gain those same powers. Also, they felt threatened by the shamans as well. If they had that much power, who said they couldn't overthrow their king? Yes, the kings could use the shamans for certain things like healing, blessing an area etc., but no real power came back to them. So some kings started kidnapping women of fire to find out from where they got all these mysterious abilities. Was there an unknown god somewhere who gave them the power? The king started asking the women who possessed the fire how they did what they did, but when the shamans couldn't really explain it in other terms than that they just had the ability, the kings got frustrated and started torturing the shamans in hope for them to tell the truth. When the women still couldn't tell them, the kings and their soldiers started raping them. This became ongoing when they heard rumors that men could gain some powers from having intercourse with a woman and take in the energies when the female had her orgasm. When rape didn't do it, hardly any women had orgasms during rape. The patriarchal kings used other tactics. They rewarded women of fire who had great results from their shamanism and had them move into the king's castle. They made it a privilege to have sex with the king, and by manipulating the women in this fashion, some believed this to be an honor, and they were dressed up to have sex with the ruler. After a while, the kings who practiced this kind of manipulation soon had collected their own harems, from where they could pick and choose whom to have sex with. They found that with practice, the kings could actually tune into the 96% for the short moment the female had an orgasm, and that energy built up in their bodies for a while, but they were not able to sustain it, which frustrated them. After a while, some female shamans were tortured and raped to death or used in black magic rituals of a kind that is still practiced today amongst the global elite. They induced fear and terror in the victim, and when the female was on the height of terror, they killed her and drank her blood. This, they noticed, gave them huge power rushes and they got access to realms they otherwise could not reach. After had practiced this kind of human sacrifice for a while, they took it a bit further. They started raping young girls who still had not reached puberty. The same thing was done to these young girls. When they vibrated on the highest terror level they were killed, and the perpetrators drank their blood, getting an additional kick from the adrenaline rush of the victim. The late Sir Lawrence Gardner said that the ones who were set up to rule for the Anunnaki, Syrians, as kings, presidents, dictators, or whatnot, drank menstrual blood called star fire, but never mentioned that they still do the same thing today. When they practiced their rituals and drank the menstrual blood, and blood in general, from the women and men of fire, they drank the blood of the goddess. Gaining the power they did by practicing this, the kings felt they were strong enough to expand their kingdom. Thus, wars broke out between regions, or countries, in a fight over real estate. Whether Poseidon did something about this or not is unknown to me, but wars were common in Atlantis, so either he was not able to stop them, or he didn't bother. Neither did he bother when the lesser councils started standing up against the kings, rebelling over how they were treated, and even killed. Maybe this was a part of the experiment, to see how it would all develop on its own and from there make further adjustments in the human programming. This is probably how he thought, for he made a lot of adjustments, working hard in his laboratories under seas. Every now and then he came to the surface in his saucer-shaped craft and landed outside his palace, or hovered over the land. People recognized it because it was distinct from the Syrian ships which they used in the atmosphere and when traveling across the solar system. The Syrian craft looked more like super-modern airplanes, but used zero-point energy and could stand still in the air, just like EA's ships could. When Ninhursag joined him in his laboratories, there was some serious genetic work going on. Although many wars eventually subsided and diminished to mere conflicts with sudden outbreaks, the kings, and the males in general who tried to understand feminine power, never gave up in their attempts to gain the power and wisdom many women were born with. Life, however, went on, and the female shamans continued reigning as the masters in some ways of looking at it. In public, the priestesses dressed in robes of white linen. They were grand experts in plants and medical potions. It is clear that Poseidon wanted a patriarchal regime, but to let the females do their own thing to develop what they all needed for future purposes. There were Syrians, however, who settled down in certain parts of Atlantis as well, and they were always eager to suck the life energy out of the females, and dark rituals were often the game for the day. However, knowing the power of the universe, they also chose special days and went to special sacred places to perform their horrific rituals, and they and their hybrid offspring, today's elite, are doing the same thing in present time.